Oh, here we go. Oh, well, hi, everybody. Welcome to the Economic Development Focus Group meeting that we're holding as part of the master plan development process. Just a quick heads up, this is being recorded. It will likely end up on, if you will, the master plan advisory committee page for town hall, but really primary purpose is for record keeping and chapter development for the town's consultant, Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. So with that, why don't we start with a round of introductions, starting with you, Lori.
Okay. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here in person and also to see you folks online. I am Lori Tanner. I'm the Economic Development Manager at Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. And I've been in that position for quite a while. I've been in the PVPC for about 21 years. So I'm pretty familiar with the area. I have not spent as much time in Southwood as I would now like to. It's beautiful out here.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kyle Fennell. I am a land use planner with Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. I am one of the newest members of that department. I haven't been there nearly as long as Lori, only a month, but I've been attending all of the focus groups with the Southwick Master Plan, and I'm excited to be back and happy to hear from you.
Good morning, I'm Scott Lehman. I'm a business owner in town, Tonic Landscaping, a Beach Charles Real Estate Holding Company. I am also a member of the Master Plan Advisory Committee.
Andy Reardon, resident of the town. I own additional attic storage, previously A&R Auto Glass.
My name is Jennifer Nolasco. I've been here in town since 2004, a couple businesses, a couple pieces of property, and I'm excited to be on this group.
Michael McMahon, I'm with the Economic Development Commission.
Good morning, Inga Hoteling, private citizen. I've got involved with the community a couple of years ago with the Carvana introduction into our town, and realized at that time that I wanted to be more visible in the community and focus on preservation.
Marcus Phelps, a member of the planning board.
I'm John Goddard, town planner and stormwater coordinator here in Southwick. Online, we'll just go down the list here. Michael Shield.
I am Mike Shield. I'm with Wally Computer Associates, located here in town.
And Eric Mason.
Hi, Eric Mason, owner of the Mason Agency here in town.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Lori, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Okay. Thanks everyone for coming. Really appreciate it. Now, as you probably are aware, or maybe not so much aware, but we are working on a complete master plan for the town of Southwick. So we're looking at a number of different elements, including, land use, recreation, open space, infrastructure, transportation, and economic development. So my task is working on the economic development portion of the plan, and look, in context of all of the other aspects as well. So, so to that end, I have done some research and I have written up this draft, which is essentially an existing conditions analysis. So I've looked at what we've looked at the data, we've looked at I just cover right there. Demographic data, workforce data, a list of major employers, which I fact checked on, online essentially, and could use additional fact checking on that part. And also came up with some issues that I think need further discussion and need your input as townspeople, residents, business owners, to let us know, what your concerns are, what you're hoping to achieve in this master planning process, and what specific issues are of most interest to you. So that is the purpose of this focus group, is to take this draft, it's just kind of here's how things are now, and turn it into, or add on to it, kind of where we want to go, and what are the problems, what are the opportunities, and where do we want to go from here, and what are your thoughts about that? So that's kind of the setting. Does anyone have questions about that? No, okay. So starting with, I believe everyone has, did we hand out the sheet with the text strings
Questions?
also? Okay, so you should have a handout that says Economic Development Focus Group. Thursday, February 2, issues and opportunities, questions for discussion. Okay, so there are 6 total. And I'm hoping that we have time to get through all of them. We should.
There's a whole stack of them here.
I ended up alone.
They're in the
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I sent them out last night. I have.
Yeah, there's definitely plenty right there.
Yeah.
So they have to do with a variety of areas. We're gonna look at kind of the issue of vacant farmland and industry. We're gonna look at commercial center areas in town, the Congamon Lakes and sort of that as part of the whole recreational economy. Looking at the agricultural economy, looking at the issue of cannabis, kind of pulling that out on its own because it's a big issue. The survey that residents completed that got huge responses to the entire survey. There were definitely people on both sides of that issue. And then the question of existing businesses and how can we support and retain existing businesses so they can thrive and grow in Southwick. So let's start with number 1, which is probably the most recent in your memory. It started with this Carvana proposal, and that made a lot of people realize that there was some available open land that could be developed and care about how it's developed. So we wanted to ask you what types of businesses and industries are acceptable in industrial areas, and which ones would you prefer to exclude from those areas or regulate more carefully? And there's 2 industrial zones. So which ones are acceptable in the restricted industrial zone? So I will stop talking and ask you to.
So this is just an open forum then?
Yep.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna just jump right in regards to the zones that are being spoken of. Obviously, the surveys that came back through the master plan, there's an overwhelming sense of wanting to preserve the space. So that's the side of the fence that I'm on, trying to see how we can be creative to preserve it, but still generate potentially some revenue from it and have it still be part of the landscape that we love and adore. So that's the stance that I would like to take towards this. Preservation. But still looking at potential creative ways to preserve, possibly farm off of that land and still generate a minor income from it that could sustain some of the taxes.
Okay, so uses of the land that would preserve sort of the open space element.
Correct. And the legacy of what that land was years ago, going back 250 years potentially.
One thing that people need to consider is the way our laws are written now and everything in town. Open space is taxed basically at 0. Farmland is taxed at almost 0. In other words, you could have an acre of farmland and it's taxed at being valued at a couple of $1,000s. That same acre, if it's residential, all of a sudden it's taxed at $80,000 to $150,000 for a building lot. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but just we have a few kind of like facts on the table. And agricultural land provides almost no employment.
It's all low income employment,
It's what?
low.
Yeah,
There's no money.
Majority are
it's
H2B.
minimum for
Hardworking,
people
okay.
who are here on an agricultural visa, earning $12 or $13 an hour. So it's very, very low.
That's kind of what I read in all of this is like. This one says, manufacturing has the highest total wages, highest weekly wages in town. It also says everybody leaves town for their money. Right, all our high paid people don't work in Solid. But manufacturing makes all the money in town. And then, yeah, again, farmland, but then we want this farmland, but we never mandate that our school systems use any of the products from the farmland. So we don't insist that we actually support our own farms. And if you look at the Big Y parking lot compared to Ray Farm parking lot, measured, obviously it's way bigger, and the same with Calabrese. So we're talking the talk, but we're not walking the walk and so.
Well, maybe that's what needs to be revisited.
Right, but this says this says manufacturing pays the money. And I'm not saying we need to mow everything down and put up smokestacks, but we need to keep in mind that and if you go back 250 years, hostile Indians, that's the word used in the article. Hostile Indians were an issue in Southwick 250 years ago. So if we go back, we'd take down my house, your house, everybody's house, and we'd put it back to the way it was, and we'd look at it from Westfield. So, and those are just like the disconnects in all of this. Like you said, if we do all agricultural, there's not enough money to support the schools and the things that you want.
Right,
If
but
we
then,
have all, the steakhouse, all the employees at the steakhouse are low paid employees too. They're working for tips for the most part. So there's like no money in utopia.
So just to reorient a little bit back to kind of what industrial uses might be acceptable
Right.
to you. Say there's a property that is zoned industrial and that has a, say that today someone comes in and wants to build something. What kinds of things might be, that might preserve? It might be that it's only developed on part of the property and the rest is left open space. It might be, some other, an agricultural related use that maybe is a higher, further down the processing chain that would generate higher revenue. So maybe this is a difficult question to kind of think about, what those things might be, but if you have thoughts, what in town now do you kind of like and doesn't bother you that you feel is compatible? Maybe is a good question.
I think it's what we want to have the town look like. When I first moved into this town 30 years ago, you could drive down 10 and 202 and it had an essence to it, from Ray's Farm to the golf course. And now that's being built up. We've got over 30 new homes in the golf course area, which is generating taxable income. But it also, the more we build, the more resources we're going to have to tap into, and we're going to have to build upon, from our schooling to the fire to services and needs for water. So I think it comes from the way that I look at it as a private citizen. What does our select board, what does our planning board envision the town to look like? And we've been trying to get answers on that and have been coming up against brick walls. So I think what we have to do as a community is to really evaluate, how do we want Southwick to look, not just today, but what we're doing with Marcus at the helm, 2040. And look and see, what is the balance? How can we sustain our services financially, but also listen to what the people want from the master plan survey, which is preservation. So it's a fine line and a fine balance. We already have one industrial park, which we can still build upon. But do we want to take 10 and 202 and turn it into one commercial business after another, which is then going to make an impact as to why I and why others moved into this community. So I think it comes down to just truly, what is the vision that our leaders of this community have for the town, and how are they going to exploit it?
Okay,
And I don't think all of us here at the table, because we're all at different sides, are going to have that kumbaya moment.
I think,
But it's
I
a
think I
balance.
can, if I could offer, my perspective, because I think, the first question's very interesting, to me, because the owner of my company has preserved a lot of land here in town. He owns the former Chuck Steakhouse, which is a brewery. He owns across the street, which he, rents out for farming and whatnot. And we're fortunate to be located in the industrial park. And we have a large facility here. He owns the land where we're building a second facility. So I can appreciate it and understand. I grew up in West Springfield. I've lived here in Southwick for, I think, almost 23 years. And when I was a kid, West Springfield, Route 5, had a drive-in movie theater and a donut dip, and there wasn't much else. And I looked at how that got built up, and West Springfield went from a smaller town to, a city. And I appreciate, raising my family here in Southwick. I live here in town, so I appreciate, the ruralness in the preservation. But as someone running a business, I also appreciate the industrial park and the flexibility it gives us to build our facilities here. So, and I like that we have an industrial park. I think about, would a second industrial park help us? I know there's concerns on it, but it can help with tax revenue and whatnot. So I guess from my perspective as a homeowner and someone that moved to Southwick because I really fell in love with the small town, and we've gotten to know some lifelong friends here. I love the preservation and what we're doing. I appreciate it. It doesn't drive a lot of revenue. But as someone running a business, I also appreciate the industrial zones, and that we're fortunate enough to be in one and to be able to, I can make my living here, and many of our people who live in town and live in the surrounding community here of Western Mass are part of that. So, I don't know what the right answer is, but I appreciate that we're preserving land here in town. And, my owner owns a lot of land and preserves a lot of it, but I also appreciate the industrial factor and what it brings to the town in terms of revenue and people living here, moving here, going to restaurants and whatnot. So I guess my thing is I'm torn on this because I appreciate both of them and what we're trying to do.
I might
This
just
is
say.
Bill Crawford.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, Bill.
This is
Go ahead,
Bill Crawford here. I've lived in Southwick about 5 years. I got the bee farm in town. From what I like, and from what or how I feel, and from what I'm hearing a lot of other people feel, is we want to have the look and preservation long term of our native look, our ruralness. But we need. I would think an industrial park would be a fine solution, or it wouldn't be bad. But what's probably more important about it is where are we going to locate it? Out of sight, out of mind, is really probably going to keep people happy. There's always going to be someone that's going to say, hey, we don't want this in our backyard. But if our goal is where we want to be, what's the look of our town in 50 years from now, 100 years from now, if we want to keep this, to a lot of areas, they just want to grow and grow and grow and grow. And they're going to run out of open space. And 50, 100 years from now, as it is right now, Massachusetts can't produce its own food. And if we're become an area where we can facilitate more, produce farming, yeah, it's not high-paying jobs, but those are jobs that are essential. And if in the long run, do we want to be able to have access to local food, or do we want to dependent on places that are far away, where if you know, heaven forbid something bad happened, we would suffer with transportation issues, logistics issues to get proper amounts of food in, but that's kind of like a bigger picture thing. But yeah, I wouldn't be against developing some areas as long as it's, I think it'd actually be, I think it'd be good, but you're gonna hear a lot less flack if it goes out of sight.
Yeah, I would just want to call people's attention to the zoning map, which, of course, we all have to live with as far as what's allowed where. And it's an important map. As I recall, zoning was sort of developed in the 1950s. So this map is an old map, really. And you look at the purple, the deep purple is the industrial area, industrial restricted, which means any development that occurs in this area has to go through a special permitting process. But you look at, why is the area sort of up on the north end here, Tannery Road, College Highway, Beating Hills Road, why was that industrial? Well, there used to be a railroad line that came down through that, right through the center, which is now the rail trail. So things have changed as to the criteria or the reasoning as to why that area was set up for industrial. And, industry really requires certain things to exist, transportation important, energy resource, so forth. So as we go through this master planning process, I'm expecting that there'll be some recommendations for changes in the zoning map. And the other thing you look at is the green area, which is agricultural and conservation. So this is a fairly restrictive area. A lot of it is orientated towards steep slope. You look on the west side of town, that's the Sodom Mountain Range. So we're, not wanting to have a lot of development on steep slopes. And then on the east side, you're looking at wetlands, the green, down along the Great Brook. That's where we have or West Springfield has their water wells, the drinking water wells. And on the south end of town, down around Congamon Road, that green area is pretty much swampland. It's Goose Pond area. So just, as we go through the master planning process, we're going to come up with certain things. And I think one thing that's important, what is the criteria? What do businesses and industries need to succeed? I mentioned transportation and energy. I don't know what else, folks need.
They need
to be
employees.
successful. So you need some qualified employees, depending on how high tech, your company is. And I think we all like high tech because it's sort of a low impact. It's not producing a lot of waste materials or demanding a lot of resources. Obviously, electricity and so forth. But anyway, that's just sort of my take as a planner. And but I think criteria, we're going to be interested in, if we put together some kind of an analysis to see what are the most suitable, desirable locations, maybe for some new industrial or business zone areas. And it doesn't have to be like heavy industry. It can be light industry. Our zoning is like one level. Other towns have, light industrial. They don't allow certain heavier industries. Ours is kind of just a one description, industrial. And then we list all the uses that are allowed in it. And anyway, I'd like to hear, what people need. You mentioned workers, so we need workers.
Right, and that's a struggle for many, many manufacturing companies. For the past 20 years, I've worked for the largest privately held search firm. And my responsibility is to find companies top talent. And it's a struggle. whether it's landscapers or people that are willing to work in a storage facility to manufacturing. So there's just such a struggle right now. And my fear is if we open up to such an industrial impact, we're going to have businesses that, yes, they're going to get a good tax rate. And yes, they're going to have space, but they're not going to probably be able to thrive as well as we think they're going to because of the struggles that even Westfield is having right now, finding people to work. And even just looking in our own town itself, I mean, this year was the very first time in 20 some years I ever saw the summer house looking for help. They've always been an employer of choice because of all the kids. So I think we have to look beyond just the industrial growth as to how are we going to be able to sustain that growth. Once they come into town, how are they going to thrive? And there's a struggle right now with very well-established, successful companies within our local 20-mile demographic here.
And that gets into a little bit of some of the business retention issues that we have here. And we're also going to talk about commercial centers. So I'm thinking maybe it's a good time to kind of continue on with some of these other issues that are going to relate to this and then circle back around just so that we don't run out of time. But I hear what everyone is saying and I understand. And I certainly was thinking in the back of my mind, why is this zoned industrial? So,
So can we start there? As to what we can do as a community to reevaluate that?
well, I think you can do that, but maybe that's not the purpose of today, right now, right?
I was mostly looking at you to see if you wanted to move into other explorations within the questions. I think that reshaping and looking at the opportunities and where they're located in town for a multitude of uses is a super important consideration. But I do want to make sure that Lori and her team have the opportunities explore some of the other areas of the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is going to be a big part of this whole process, the larger process. And there are people who are actually specialists in zoning who are going to be working with you. Have you met Ken? Have you met Ken Comita yet?
Yes.
He's our zoning czar. So I'm sure that you're going to be talking more about this. So, and we can also continue, but let's maybe move on to number 2 and the others and see what comes up as in those as well. How does that sound?
I think it sounds like a reasonable.
Okay. All right. So, looking at other commercial zones and areas in town, there are several existing. Some are zoned for it and some are sort of grandfathered in. And I know one of them is sort of considered the town center, where we are. It's kind of a large spread out town center from my perspective. That's how it seems. And most of it's in corridors, kind of, not so much like a little main street like some towns have. So I wanted to know how you felt about that. How do you feel about access to the businesses that you use on a daily basis? How are these businesses doing? Some of you are business owners, several of you. So how is that working? And are there any changes that you'd like to see in the future that would benefit your businesses or the community in general, as far as commercial centers?
I just think in general, business has been a struggle for a lot of people. And not only finding the help, but also people being able to afford going out and eating out as a luxury. And, for you, it might be a little bit different because you're in a totally different business, but people need their landscaping done and all that, but they don't necessarily have to go out to restaurants and spend their money there. But in my particular case, I think it's a struggle for a lot of people to actually go out and enjoy the things, the amenities that we have here.
As an auto blast guy, which I did for 40 years, 30 in Western Mass, I pretty much serviced the whole state at one point or another, starting in Cambridge, then Marlboro, and then here. and driving all these different communities and seeing places like Northampton and Greenfield that have like really cool downtowns. And it's because they have a go-round road. And we don't have a go-round road. We were supposed to have a
Supposed
go-round
to.
road.
Yeah,
Right, so our South Loomis, North Loomis was supposed to connect to Westfield with a new bridge over the river to their Fontusic. So we're supposed to have go-round roads, we just never got that far. So if you look at our South Loomis International Speedway, because it's this huge wide road and people do go 80 miles an hour down it. It's supposed to connect all the way down to Route 20 in Connecticut. Right. That was the big master plan back in the day, but without a go-round road, you can't have a downtown, because right now you can't cross our street because we put a suicide lane in. Which makes traffic go faster and it's more alienating to pedestrian.
Yeah.
It didn't help. It helped traffic. It didn't help the businesses
I've never heard that.
or the walkers.
It's not really
You never heard of the
walkable
suicide
downtown.
lane?
No, that's
Oh,
great.
But that is what it is. You know, because you're going head on
I
to
think it's a
somebody.
suicide lane, even if you're driving.
Yes. So, you know, again, we have a disconnect there where it's like, oh, let's make our downtown beautiful. And stick foam poles in our sidewalks and put a suicide lane in. It's like, you know, somehow those didn't work together.
Yeah,
Mass DOT came in, it's like, oh, this could be great. It's not,
yeah,
you know, there's just a lot of conflicting things there. The
Yeah.
little things we have done that are super cool is like connecting the drugstore to the gas station with a little connector road. So you don't have to go out and around. And when we put things in and we don't do that, it's kind of a sin. Things,
Mhm.
you know, you should be able to get from the O'Reilly's to the bank parking lot, which those two are new businesses, but they don't connect.
right. Connections that are off the road.
That's a
Off
great
the main
point.
road.
Specifically at College Act. I agree with Andy,
Right.
100%.
well, that's our downtown. So, but I know even for myself, and I've talked to numerous other residents, you plan your day. When you get out onto College Highway, you hit the businesses on the left-hand side or the right-hand side.
Right. You know, to make a
Because
left.
it's going to be inevitably very frustrating to get from point A to point B
Mhm.
if you don't do that. And unfortunately, our town is not aesthetically pleasing. I don't know what you all feel, but for me, when I drive through the center of town, I try not to look, or I'll go down Hillside and Hastings to get to my home out on Klein Road. Because it's just a hodgepodge. When you look at some of the other quintessential New England towns, and I'm from the Berkshires, they have this aura and there's an essence to it, and people are proud of their downtown. I don't think we as Southwickians are as proud of our town as we could be with how it looks in our general business population area, that downtown zone.
So I would agree wholeheartely with that. I can't take credit for this, but, the last meeting, was mention of, a facade improvement project, which I went home and I thought about that and that'd be fantastic.
Yeah,
Mm.
where's the money gonna come from, Scott?
Pardon?
Where would the money come from?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Don't have the answer to that question.
That's the next step.
That's the next step.
That's the next step. We just, we want the what.
Is there,
Yeah.
is there state, federal funds available if we push those buildings
Yeah.
back? We create a parking area, something that somebody can walk a mile or a half mile and visit 5 different shops. I do not know. I don't know the answer to that question. And there was confusion too as to where is the center of town?
Right,
Typically, you know, town hall, in a small community, there's a town hall and there's a church next to it, and there's a few buildings next to it. That is
Town
considered
common with a cannon.
with a town common. We're missing the cannon. We have-
we can probably
Um,
excavate
The
one.
church is just a little ways up there, so it's.
I know I'm jumping out of line here, but when Tractor Supply first came to us, I was, you know, man, we have a big box store in town. But I see a variety of residents there, residents that visit there. I see BMWs as much as I do see pickup trucks in there picking up things. I think it's been, I think it was a nice addition to the town and its needs, and I know that they've expanded. There's one in Simsbury and all that now, but I think that was a nice addition to the town. That doesn't mean, I don't necessarily want to see a Home Depot or a Lowe's here. But you know, so I think there is a balance between a large box and then our small quaint little shops. And I think it'd be hard pressed for me to say, well, we need this kind of shop and this kind of shop and this kind of shop in town. I think that, the economy and what people want will vet all that out for us. But I agree, but I wholeheartedly agree that there's no symmetry in town. And I'd love to see that facade project or parking or something get some consistency for the 5 miles of downtown that we have.
With parking in the back, that you can access all of the buildings from, if you can access all the buildings from the back. So this would be a way to do it without moving all the buildings back.
Right, right.
That's an interesting point. Well, Andy and Scott, the speeds, it's anti-pedestrian, it's not pedestrian friendly, it's actually dangerous. So there may be a potential to redesign somehow, slow things down. Because I'm thinking of other communities along College Highway, they have to deal with College Highway, but things are slower.
I'm amazed that
can't-
we have 40 miles an hour in front of the post office. That just, there's a police officer there in the morning and I have to look at my speed, make sure I'm on speed. I'm going 40 and it feels fast.
Yeah,
We should absolutely slow.
And it's 35 down through the center. And it's also a downhill if you're going southbound. So
It's not just the speed, it's the volume of cars. You're playing Frogger, getting across the street. So until you do some sort of go around opportunity to get the volume off. And as a town, we've been like super reluctant to bring a new road in. My feeling is we should bring a new road through, give us an exit.
Tannery.
And that way the people in Granville stay on the road, go up to Granville. I'm not picking on Granville. I
There
love
may
Granville.
be, you may be getting
But-
Tannery connecting to Hudson Drive, which might take at least some of the truck traffic
Yeah, no,
off if they're not coming downtown.
you're driving a big truck, you're not gonna take the left and the right, it's too damn hard. Even towing a landscape trailer, you're not gonna take all those turns, you're gonna take the long straight road.
But you're definitely gonna take some traffic off.
Yeah, his pickup trucks and trailers could pop in Hudson Drive
Right,
and go home that way instead of
right,
coming out to College Highway.
and that'll help a little,
Yeah,
but yeah, until you kind of have an interstate. I've always thought like you extend Powder Mill Road across the fields and you promote that as your little Mayberry RFD in those fields there, which they're not gonna stay forever because the money's just not there to agriculture. You can't have a farmer work 100 hours a week and live in poverty because he feels good about growing corn. It's a nice idea, unfortunately. But you can change, I think you need to have growth in a loving fashion. Yes, is like the right way to say it, right? Do it well. And I think you're kind of on that. It's like, yeah, we want preservation in beautiful areas and we have like Sofanowski's and the 40 acres over behind North Pond. And the National Park Service is buying a chunk off of North Long Yard. You're gonna have these wonderful areas. You also need to have the growth in the or even the residential areas put in a tasteful and sane fashion, which is the opposite of what our downtown grew as a hodgepodge through the 40s and 50s and 60s. It's just, one building at a time just got plopped in and with no thought.
What was the, and maybe we don't talk about this in our master plan advisory committee meeting enough. What was the bylaw that was passed that now 40% of a new industrial restricted lot needs to remain, if somebody, I know I'm misquoting that, 40% of our lot needs to remain open space, unpaved,
So what you're referring to is the major development, there's another word there that's missing, but that review bylaw. Essentially an opportunity for what the planning board in this particular case to be fed information. And as part of that, you're right, there were some development caps for a given site about how much of a site could be covered by a building. And perhaps, I don't remember which depth, because I don't have it up in front of me, Scott.
So I think that does an awful lot to, and it leads, and it makes an enormous opportunity. And I know I'm going backwards. I know we're going back to one, I apologize. But it.
Yeah, but I
it's
knew
trying
you
to-
would though, see?
But I mean, if that is that is actually enacted and enforced, then it gives our planning board the ability now to say, okay, you've got out of 100,000 acre lot, 100,000 square foot lot, 40,000 is gonna stay green. We want an enhanced we want an enhanced landscaping plan to hide what we have, not hide, but blend in with what we have going on. I think that at first, as a business owner, owning nearly 10 acres, I'm like, well, that just about made half of my property undevelopable and unusable. And then I started thinking about it and saying, well, that's a great way to preserve that small town feel where you're not building city blocks and you truly have some green space and some areas to shade, shelter, some of the structures that are being bought.
But then my concern with that, Scott, is something that Marcus had said earlier in regards to industrial. What is that definition of industrial? Because right now, the way that I'm understanding, Southwick doesn't have a definition of, is it light industrial? Is it heavy industrial? So that opens up to the unknown. So that you can have potentially I'm gonna go back to 2 years ago, the Carvanas, or most recently the Blue Rhinos, where we're looking at what is it that we really want to have in that space or not in that space. So it comes back down to that as well.
So when I went to purchase my land, the first thing I did was I came to town hall and I got the bylaws. And I read them top to bottom and see if my business fit in the box, and it did. I think it would be an easier. If I think instead of rezoning, and again, I apologize, I know I just took 2 steps back. But instead of looking at rezoning, we look at changing some of those bylaws, like the one we were just talking about with the 40% of green space. Changing some of those, I would be, and I'm not speaking for the owners of the 686 College Highway, but I would not be pleased that I spent X amount of dollars on my industrial restricted 10 acres that I had a book this big of opportunity and possibility that we bought 11 years ago, and somebody take the book and cut it in half, or take it completely away, saying when you're done, you need to be a farm, because that's going to give, instead of my ability to sell that property to this many people, there's going to be this many people interested in it. So it's just devalued property. And again, I'm not speaking for anybody else. I'm speaking for my own investment.
Right, that is a good point, because that would be the issue.
So if you change the rules, it has a significant impact on it.
It does.
Yeah,
After,
it does.
so if you buy a Cadillac and somebody says, well, we're gonna give you a Kia. And I'm not picking on Kias either, but that's, to me was what it would feel like,
Yeah.
is that I just significant, an investment is completely gone. Or, one of the developers that, a land developer that hasn't something that's already in residential and he's got an approved plan, and all of a sudden say, nope, it's agricultural. Well, he paid $1 million for that parcel. Now it's worth 200,000. I think that's going to be a big rub, or potentially a big rub. And I know nothing about rezoning. But if we slowly, or we looked at it saying, okay, you need to, and I'm going to misquote here, John. You need 200 feet of road frontage, and you need X amount of setback and whatnot. I think that's a more logical approach than rezoning, I think.
Performance.
And then just a kind of a side note, seeing how I already come backwards. Do we know percentage wise where Southwick falls to other similar rural towns? Percentage wise on industrial, residential, agricultural?
Actual land use.
Yeah, in terms of just percentage, okay. I don't have that information, but I just want to clarify your question. So,
Yeah. And I know we're a unique town with
Towns that are similar to us, I know Blandford, has been doing a lot of planning. Blandford, I don't know if any of the other hill towns have been, involved.
So those towns would have much less, you're talking about how much percentage existing industrial?
Yes.
Okay. So
We
probably
probably have a lot more.
more similar to an Agawam or an East Long Meadow.
See, a lot of those towns west of us have 40 or 50% of the land owned by the state. It's state forest or it's
Yeah,
something like that, or giant lakes or water reservoirs.
Mhm.
So in terms of them, we're the big fish. We look and we're looking up, it's like being in the water. We're looking at Agawam, it's 3 times their size. Westfield, 4 times their size, so they're gonna be totally different in terms of industrial or commercial or whatever.
So not a good measure of, do we have a healthy industrial and commercial amount of land available for us?
Theoretically, you can see those, in those 2 purple areas. 686 College Highway is 91 acres. They've been growing tobacco there since 1940 something when they bought the property up until a few years ago. And now it's hay, or somebody will grow corn in there for 1 year and back to hay or something. But the land's been zoned industrial for 30 or 40 years or longer. The other thing about the industrial park in the north end of town, if you go in Tannery Road, and this is long before I lived in town, but I've done some checking, that's where the town dump was. If you go there now, there's 2 junkyards. So this is not great agricultural land that's being used for farming. It's atrocious. It's stuff that I'm glad it's there, not on College Highway, because I wouldn't want anyone to see it. So we've got all that junk stuff, at least it's out of the way. Same as Hudson Drive, a chunk of it are sand pits or gravel pits. And then there's several manufacturers, there's your place, there's somebody who wants to grow marijuana in the greenhouses or whatever. So over time, some of that's gonna change. Because now we're talking about a solar farm where they used to dig out sand.
Driving around Western Mass, I think we're more compatible towns above Amherst, like Sunderland, between Amherst and Greenfield. Because they're more on a plateau farming.
Yeah.
If you go west of us, that's mountains.
Yeah.
We're not compatible to them at all, because they never had the farming base.
On page 10 of this draft, there is a chart that looks at assessed values by property type and the comparison communities. And I don't know who chose these communities, but I think it was chosen before I got involved with our Long Meadow, Westfield, Agawam, and Springfield.
And we struggled with that because we're not comparable to them.
Yeah, so.
That's a good point. They may want to
Good
change
point.
some of those.
So comparable to Sunderland and Montague,
So
Whately, yeah. up in
Okay.
there.
Whately, Sunderland, Montague,
Or even where Yankee Candle is.
Deerfield
Hadley?
area.
Hadley,
Deerfield, yeah.
Deerfield, Deerfield.
Yeah, Hadley to some extent. I
Deerfield.
think they're a little bigger with Route 9 and the development of Home Depot and Lowe's and all
Yeah,
that.
and they're struggling with the
Yeah.
same things that we are.
They have a nice, and they're making it bigger, Route 9, they have a nice corridor. So, and once you get off that corridor, it's quaint and quiet and it's
Mhm.
nice, kind of like Southwick is, but their downtown isn't on that corridor.
Mhm.
And, and that
They,
feeds you.
yeah,
Mass
they
Amherst,
also don't
obviously.
have a very defined town center.
Right.
And it is on Route 9,
Hmm.
and it's.
Yeah.
It's not a place to
If I
get
can
out.
chime in,
Sure.
so if you think, this is Bill Crawford, so if you think about it, we don't have a well-defined town centers and, these towns we're talking about up north and northern Hampshire County don't either. What we have in common is our extreme rural history and our areas of agriculture production. And that's why we don't have these nice town centers necessarily that were built up and developed as a center of commerce and people exchanging. And my comments are, a few minutes ago, we were talking about, some of the pedestrian hazards and all that on College Highway. And, my idea is our economy in town is not a pedestrian-based economy. And my 2 cents were, do we want to try to push it? I don't think it would be a wise idea to push in the direction to try to drive something that's not naturally present there to try to make up for it. I don't think it would ever happen. Those are my 2 cents.
It's interesting to look at
Are
the
we gonna,
history.
we're gonna try to link to the rail trail and make bicycle, which is kind of like pedestrian, more friendly.
Mhm.
Going back to the rail trail and you can't get a donut from the rail trail. Mrs. Murphy doesn't think that's funny. Right? You can't get to Summer House from the rail trail. There's no
Yeah.
connectors. You can ride down the road, but you don't want to ride down Depot Street. You can ride down Feeding Hills Road, or you can be on the sidewalk, which technically you're not supposed to, because it's not a shared use trail, which it should be. You should make it bigger and make it a shared use trail. Then you can connect the downtown to the rail trail, which would connect to my house, and then I can go to Big Y and I can go home. But I mean, if we're putting this in as a connector, but we're not connecting it.
Yeah, and the rail trail goes, obviously, it goes through the industrial
You
zone,
can go
so
up
maybe
Stop
there's
and Shop.
opportunities for
It's only 6
commercial,
miles.
commercial uses there that serve the rail trail.
And so it might not be that we're looking at pedestrian, but you should be looking at, like, we're trying to get away from fossil fuels and cars, or what are we trying to go towards? And, kind of to your point, like, you can't say what businesses should and shouldn't be here. Because when Tractor Supply came, you thought it was gonna be a blight, but it's a blessing, right? So hindsight's 20/20, but we thought Tractor Supply would be a bad thing. It's just like telephone poles and cell phone towers. We all thought, our ancestors thought telephone poles were horrible,
They are.
and they are. But now one of our most iconic photographs is the phone pole going across the prairie next to the barbed wire fence. Barbed wire was also horrible
Yeah.
and brought the end of the buffalo herds. It's all
Yeah,
hindsight.
I know.
We might want to switch to recreation. It's like,
Sure.
thinking about the rail trail, it's a asset.
That's a
that's
good
brought up.
idea.
For
We should talk about the lakes.
the lakes, question 3. Yeah.
So, yeah, so I noticed there are some small businesses that seem to serve a kind of a recreational tourist visitor economy near the lakes, but it's fairly limited. There's not a lot of opportunity there. And I know that there's been issues with the water quality and overuse on Congamon Lakes. Am I saying it right, Congamon?
Yes, we've stopped it.
So,
It's
yeah,
pretty
what are-
significant in Southwick since we have 2 committees. We have one committee, Lake Management Committee, which is the governmental arm that watches the lakes. And then we also have a private nonprofit, which is the Citizens Restoring Congamon. So we've got 2 groups that are, working with the lake. And then we have a lot of businesses around the lake, and we have homes around the lake. So it's a big thing.
Marcus, the biggest thing though down there is the parking. Even if you wanted to go visit the lake on a Saturday or Sunday, you're not gonna be able to find a parking spot anywhere. And that's definitely, if the lakes were to become more popular, there'd have to be a way to figure out how to get people into that area. Because you go to that boat ramp at noon on a Saturday, you're not gonna be able to find a park. And then you see the trailers lined up for 12, 15 trailers down the road waiting to get in there. And that's even the same on the other side on the smaller ramp. There's no parking there either. So just to make your way to get to the lake, good luck.
And what
The
about
backside of that is
access to the
Put all the
businesses?
parking in for all those trailers.
Hmm.
Now you got 55 more boats on a lake that already has too many boats.
Not necessarily,
It's like-
not necessarily for the
again, it's
trailers,
like-
more for the people that just want to come and visit and
Right,
enjoy
right.
the water, go to the pier. You can't
Right.
really do that.
No,
And
there
can
is no
you
parking for
access-
No,
cars.
there's not.
Businesses from, like, if you were to park there, can you access the businesses that you're talking about around the lakes?
Yeah, well, I have the old Louis V's and the Brass Rail and the old Nora's, and you can't find a parking spot anywhere
Right.
around there.
There's no parking for a car.
The businesses have their own parking lots, but they're private for that business.
And a lot of times people will park in our parking lots and go on the lake and they'll leave their car there all day. And
Sure.
we'll lose that spot for the restaurant.
Right? So if you want to go out on the fishing pier as a pedestrian, you literally can't visit the lake.
And it would be nice to have more fishing spots on the lake too, because that's obviously like a big attraction here. But there's really, unless you're on the pier, there's really nowhere to fish.
And you
And
can't,
that's not the best fishing over there anyway.
you can't get to the pier because there's no place
No,
to park.
exactly. But that's definitely the biggest issue on the lake is how do you get there?
Mhm.
Or how do you also control the people that are coming in?
Mhm.
My philosophy has always been, it should be first right of refusal of town residents. Because you've got so many homes around that lake that have their own piers. So they should have the right to the lake. And then also for people that are coming in, trailering their boats in, Southwick residents should have first right of refusal before Springfield, Agawam, West Springfield.
But since the state provided money, the state says in Southwick, you can't do
You
that.
can't do that. So that's,
Oh, that's almost like economic discrimination too. Because only the wealthy can go on the lake. Because
That's what they do in Connecticut along the beaches, Long Island Sound.
Oh, yeah,
If you live in Greenwich or any of these, New Canaan, any of these towns, oh, you want to come in? It's $60 to park your one car.
right,
Therefore, you'll go somewhere else and
right.
they keep the beaches private to people.
Giant filtration.
yeah,
Gold
just
Club.
like what Babs does. You know, if
Right.
you're a resident, you get there for free, but if I want to use it, I have to pay to
Right.
go to the beach.
And it's never an issue during the week. It's really just
Just on
especially the
weekends.
Saturday, Sunday, but Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it's impossible to get down there. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you want to go enjoy the lake, it's perfect.
Mhm.
But on the weekends, it's overcrowded and
So I think a way undervalued or underused asset the town has is the public town beach. There's plenty of room for expansion of parking there, if that parking lot would ever fill up.
you're
Um,
talking on South Pond.
Yeah.
Yes, South Pond.
There's room for additional parking.
There's plenty of room for parking.
Now, if you parked there, would you be able to access, so I guess it's not an issue, access to the businesses is not an issue. Is that what you're saying?
I mean,
At the town beach, there would be no businesses that person could access.
Okay,
Well, and the Krabby Joe's,
Well,
the marina.
right, but it's not a-
Things down there.
Coffee,
But it's-
coffee spot.
Red
and
Robin.
still, there's no, but there's no walkway. If you park down the beach, you gotta walk on that side road and that's a very narrow road.
Yeah, again, we didn't link the rail
you
trail.
have to get back in your car,
Mhm.
drive to the restaurant.
Yeah.
And
And
okay,
then even where Red's, where that little cafe is, that's a hard spot to park too. There's not much parking in that little plaza.
That's all
either.
accessible. It should be accessible by the rail trail. The
It
town
is.
beach is less
The
than a
town beach,
mile
no,
from the
but-
rail trail. But it's less than a mile from the rail trail. It should be
Right.
accessible.
right,
I should be able to ride from my house up here.
right.
To the beach,
Yeah, I
but
noticed
truly
that
you
it was
can't.
close. Mhm. But you can't. Okay.
Not without hitting the main, without hitting the main
Mhm.
road.
Mhm.
So it seems as though, especially with what you're talking about with people not going out as much and accessing restaurants, it seems like certainly during, especially the high season, it'd be nice to have better circulation around, at the lakes, between the businesses and the lake amenities, so that people who are enjoying the lakes will also enjoy the businesses around them. And be more likely to stay and have a meal or that kind of coffee or buy their fishing tackle there.
That's kind of the same as downtown, right? Creating the connectivity of the town beach
Right,
to your place. And that's what I'm working with the rail trail grants to fix the ramp onto Point Grove Road.
You can't
Because you
get
can't
down.
get on the Point Grove Road from the rail trail now because of the steep embankment.
Mhm.
I think we need
Where
a
are you
series of
working on
air
that?
bridges.
The back of the rail trail?
Yeah,
The fresh
that's
ones
the
there?
ale house.
Yeah.
Yeah, the town owns a park.
And that's Has there
been a-
17-foot drop.
I know, that's a great spot to go to, but you get down there, you get kids, it's hard.
Has there
Go ahead,
been
Bill.
a study done how many people actually use the rail trail in a week or a weekend? And if it's significant enough and we think we can draw more, can we, it'd be expensive, but would it be worth a long-term goal to expand like side branches off of it to different regions of town where you want people to go?
I might be wrong and then I might be off a bit, but I think in 2020, there was a count done on a weekend and it was like 1,500. It was significant.
Busy,
It's busy,
busy.
which is.
1,500 for 2020, but no one else was doing anything else in 2020.
Yeah, that's the last one I read. I'm sure there's other studies out there. I believe they do a count every year. I just don't know when.
Yeah, I'm sure, you know. what,
Was that per week or per day?
The issue.
Yes.
Accessibility to the trail,
Yeah.
not so much
Yeah.
parking, even just accessibility.
Scott, the question was, is that per week or per day?
That was, I think it was a weekend.
A weekend count.
It's busy.
That is significant, yeah.
Is there room for expansion over down by Miller Road, do parking down there? Cause that's a great spot to go on, we're in Peckham Miller Road, right across.
With Robin.
There used to be a healthy amount of cars parked off of Feeding Hills Road and the field where the maze was. You know, if the town was to take a look at purchasing some former farmland, that would be a great spot.
Yeah, I think that's Red Willowitz
Yes,
property.
Yep.
And it's closed off now.
yes.
And
Right, the
where
part
is
that's
this?
closed off, just adjacent to that, there's a big triangle there. That's non-farmable. Yeah, it looks like a drainage pond, a retention pond there. So maybe what it is.
It is.
Just
That
a-
connects 686 College Highway.
Yeah, it's all part of Carvana.
Red Willows.
You Pioneer Valley Planning Commission may have some counts.
Yeah,
I
that's.
know
what was
you
just
have
saying
some
to John,
bicycle
is that-
people over there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm sure that
bicycle
we have,
people.
we're actually have, maybe already have it, in one of the technical papers for this master plan.
I remember volunteers being asked for last year, so I know that they've done accounts.
Yeah.
The Friends of the Rail Trail probably have that data, as well as Parks and Rec.
Certainly.
Oh, yeah, there is a private group, Friends of the Rail Trail.
Yep.
That helps, I guess, keep it clean, and they do some events, community events, in it.
And they probably have great insight input as to, you know, to the Indy has recommended 2 different sites so far. How to get them into the town hall, should be town center, and then to other businesses.
Mhm.
They have great
Total sense,
information.
yeah. We'll figure out who's on our staff is working on that. I'm sure we are. All right, what about agriculture? I was exploring farms by internet and looking at a number of different websites that your local farms have, and they're doing such a variety of interesting things. But it made me want to do a farm tour out here.
The Agricultural Commission has been talking about that over the last month or two. And they had a meeting at the library last month where they brought in like 20 farmers from different farms in town, getting ideas from them.
Yes,
Because apparently Granby, Connecticut, as I understand it, has some kind of open farm day or weekend or something.
absolutely. They
So
did
if
it
you were
up in
to
Franklin
talk
County.
to the Ag Commission.
Yeah,
Yeah, they've been very active, and Bert Hansen is the chair of that group. He's on the Master Plan Advisory Committee, so he's been reporting back on the results of that get-together, which I think was a really good opportunity to discuss with farmers, and one of the things that came out of it, I think, was farmers want to be considered as a business. They
Mhm.
want to be recognized and involved, I guess, in business
They want to be
things.
taxed as a business, right?
well, if they have.
Well, who knows, Andy?
retail Operations.
Yeah, if they're
then-
selling
I don't
retail,
wanna see 'em
like
taxed as
Blossoming
business.
Acres and so forth, they're doing some stuff there. I don't know.
I'd love to see
Anyway.
it brought into the schools. I mean, we're a right to farm community. We want all this farming. But nowhere in our schools do we teach our kids to plant a seed. And nowhere on our school property are the farmers up there harrowing some stuff that the kids go out and like, we plant it in the spring, we harvest it in the
Yeah.
fall, even part of your health class or your gym class.
Yeah,
You're out there watching this stuff grow and then you're having it. But they don't integrate it in. And the same as we don't buy product from our farms. So we're talking the talk, but not walking the walk.
That's where I think what I said earlier, that we have to look at how our town is perceiving how we are.
Hmm.
From our select board, our planning board groups, or different commissions, because 4-H is something that could really impact significantly. And if we
There
do
is
bring-
active 4-H
There
in
is.
town.
But what we can do to maybe blossom that is look about purchasing a little bit of land and turning it into a learning center, an agricultural learning center.
In effect, if the Sofinowski land, you can rent for the year a plot of land and grow your own flowers or vegetables or whatever.
Like a
And
community
It's a
garden.
community garden.
The
Mhm.
agricultural commission's been doing that for the last 8 or 10 years.
But I like your idea about,
There could be a learning
a
center,
learning center.
and then you
love
can
your idea.
plant the seed and have it right through from 5th, 6th graders all the way to seniors.
You can
And they
actually
could
do it
be
there.
potentially our future farmers too in our community.
Mhm.
We've got the tobacco barns over on the Kavarna land. Why not look about that as a potential aid too, where you could turn the bottom portion into a training center, and you've got the upper part of the tobacco barns that you could turn into residential apartments.
But somebody has to come up with the money
This
to
is
buy
true.
the
This-
property.
I understand that.
You know, it's just
Yeah.
we never think of private property rights, and I'm
Mhm.
not a big
Mhm.
person in that direction. But just owning my own house, I can look and say, wait a minute. How can some entity or group of citizens come in and tell me who I can sell my house to?
Mhm.
Then we're gonna go back to religion and ethnicity and it's like,
Well, the town can purchase land and you do have community preservation
right,
act funds. And that's another thing that came up when Kyle and I were talking about this, and maybe, I think that was it. You know, would the town consider raising the amount that gets contributed to the community preservation?
we
We're
already
at the max.
contribute 3%.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
We've been doing it since 2004, 2005 when it first came out.
Sorry, I was mixing you up with someone else.
The town has spent millions buying the development rights from most of the
Okay.
wealthy farmers. in
All right,
town.
you guys get an A.
Land
Plus.
wealthy farmers, yeah.
I-
They're financially wealthy farmers.
Right.
One last thing on the
Land wealthy.
agricultural development piece of it, I mentioned in our last meeting that I thought a co-op in this town would be fantastic. Because it takes away the burden of a small operating farm of setting up the retail piece of it, which I think historically fails. And I think if you had some sort of co-op, would make life a little bit easier. I don't think we necessarily model the one in Northampton, but it is a neat store.
Yeah, and it's expanding, right?
Yes.
They opened it in East Hampton.
Yep.
Yeah.
What is that, Scott?
River Valley Co-op.
River Valley.
Oh, River Valley Co-op.
Fantastic. You natural raised beef, you can buy it there the day they open. It's every kind of mushroom you can imagine. It's a really neat, all locally sourced stuff. Really
Kind of
neat
looks
store.
like a Trader Joe's or
One up by the state police
A
car.
little
Yeah.
bit more expensive.
So there's one there, but then if you stay right
Yeah,
on 10 and
it's around
202, go
Right.
north.
Every little gold
Right
mine
before you get-
restaurant
or it
used to
might be
be.
at East Hampton, or left-hand side, is one there as well.
Okay.
It's a neat store.
Trying to get
And
back
it's not big box, it's not
4-H in the
Trader
schools.
Joe's, but Trader
as,
Joe.
as a scout guy, access to the schools for 4-H is impossible. You can't tell the kids you exist. It does, the days of handing out a flyer and then taking it home are gone. There's just like, it's impossible to promote yourself in the schools. There's just no, you can't,
But how,
you
how,
can't get in and say, hey, we're scouts, you wanna go camping? You can't, hey, we're raising rabbits, you wanna come walk? You can't go in, it's just no access.
Do the kids take field trips to local farms at all?
Well, but as a 4-H group, you can't get in and say, hey, come join 4-H. And so. that-
Yes,
and
no,
then we
I-
keep going back
yeah.
to the schools, we don't use the product in the school, we
I
don't teach the
agree.
program in the school, and we can't get in and talk to the kids. So it's like.
Right, and so
kind
you're
of stuck.
relying on, like, so some parents are bringing their kids to a farm stand or pumpkin patch on the weekends, and so you could have resources there, but that's,
But as a parent, if you have kids,
They're already-
it's never promoted to you like, hey, check out 4-H unless you happen to stumble upon it
yeah.
or you seek it out. it doesn't come to, there's no way for us to bring it to you and your kids and say, hey, do you want to do this?
But if we had a festival or an event such as a
Mhm.
tractor,
Yeah,
tractor show or something like that,
right.
some kind of a
Yeah,
community event,
the ag
you could
commission.
have a table, could have a table.
Right,
Yeah, we were at the high school open house and they put us in the cafeteria and that many people walked into the cafeteria. So the whole high school population was there and us and Girl Scouts and one other group. Oh, yeah, you can sit up in the cafeteria. We weren't like in the hallway at the entrance,
Mhm.
you know, and that's the best access we've been offered. It's
Well, that's-
really
What about the
difficult to
libraries?
penetrate
Can you
into
have-
school.
Flyers
Um,
in the library.
Yeah,
that kind of stuff you could do.
yeah. I mean, how many kids go to the library?
A lot of them after high school
Right,
ends at 2:15 in the afternoon.
right. Yeah, I pick my niece up there every Monday. Yeah, there's 10 or 12 kids there. Yeah. But to be to get to the
Right.
general
Right,
population
right,
or to like bring them out and teach them
yeah,
3 days in a semester. Just
I
doesn't
hear
happen.
you, it sounds great.
I was wondering how are some of the restaurant businesses connecting with farming? I know a couple promote the fact they're using locally sourced beef or other things like vegetables and so forth.
Mhm.
I don't know if there's any networking that goes on, or the restaurants are telling some of the farmers, hey, we could use some of these, what are they, the potatoes, the red, orange, green, the specialty kinds of products that they could use in their restaurant, but nobody here locally is growing them. I
I
don't know.
think of a lot of the
Is there
farmers
connection?
here are selling wholesale to Big Y, or they're selling wholesale to some other.
The bigger ones
supermarket.
are.
Yeah,
But the hard thing with the independent people like that is you have to be licensed. You can't just be hey, I'm a farmer, serve my stuff in your restaurant. You know, I don't think that's too legal if you're a small guy just on a small little farm. If you're like a Calabrese or one of those that actually have all the certifications.
So if a restaurant uses a certain product, they have to be careful that it's
100%. You don't
Reputable
know what the kind of
source.
pesticides are putting on that and stuff. We grow a lot of our own stuff too, but you gotta be very careful with that. But yeah, that's a great thought, a great idea, if you knew exactly where it was coming from. But you really.
An idea to tag on to that is if just one or two businesses go to a farmer and say, we want you to grow that, how much can that business actually move for that farmer? Is it economically feasible for that farmer to grow that specialty crop or whatever variety is desired by a minority of people?
Well, how many pounds of potatoes do you use a year between mashed and French fries?
Well,
You know,
tomatoes in the
tomatoes.
summertime, during season, you
Sure.
you can utilize a lot of that fresh produce, but obviously you have 8 months where, what are you gonna do? You gotta go get it from somewhere else, then your cost is fluctuates and it goes up and.
Yeah, serve safe compliant is all about like
Mhm.
food chain, chain of custody and.
Especially with meat, you cannot get something that's not stamped, you cannot serve that in a restaurant. It needs to be certified,
meat is
meat's a big thing, produce is a little easier, but.
Anything that's frozen or refrigerated the same way.
Well, eggs and milk and all that, you gotta be very careful, cause you could just go to the farm stand, and pick it up, but what happens if that fridge is broken, you don't know if that's been holding temperature the whole time and.
And then you're serving it.
Right.
yeah.
So the farmer has to.
And
be
there's not
licensed
many,
As well as the restaurant.
for the meat, there's not a lot of, USDA, certified slaughterhouses close by, because to have a slaughterhouse for be able to resell, you need to have a USDA representative there on site. And I used to help a friend of mine bring in animals to market. We had to go to Canaan, New York for that. I think it was.
Slaughterhouse, there's demand in the area. in
There's only
Mass.
one in Metro.
We
Yeah,
don't grow so much meat, it's more vegetables based.
since we only have 10 minutes left. What about-
10 minutes left. Oh, my
What
God.
about cannabis?
People are gonna leave town to get it.
Yeah.
They're either gonna spend the money here, are you talking about grow, or are you talking about?
Yeah, what are the-
Retail.
Pros and cons of allowing cannabis production and or retail sales?
production is currently illegal in town. There's a couple of companies that have been talking about doing it, but they haven't done it.
Oh, you can grow it here.
Yes,
Okay,
on Hudson Drive and 74 College Highway, They applied, the town told them to go ahead and do it, but they haven't built the building.
Okay,
In terms of retail, the town is asking the public in an informal survey right now, what do you think of retail? Because we voted it down 3 or 4 years ago. So it may come back if the selectmen see that there's, seems to be interest in allowing it. It would come up to an annual town meeting or whatever.
I think that would be the highest tax dollar you could possibly get in town.
Mhm.
Right.
I mean, think about it, you go to 20% tax on that.
Most places are already closing up because they're oversaturated. in some
Oversaturated.
communities.
Right, I know.
Yeah, some of them are. It all depends geographically.
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
think
it's
about
our
the-
choice to say they can
Yeah.
open or not. It's up to them if they want to put their money down and try it, just like
Right.
you.
Yeah.
You want to open another restaurant, give it a whirl.
Yeah, but you have like a lot of traffic coming in from Connecticut too. I know they finally started their first dispensaries out in Connecticut, but you're right on the line there on that Granby line, like that place in front of Big Y would have been perfect when they turned that one down. They had all the right
There's only
stage,
like
they had, that was
5 in the
perfect
entire
turn.
state of Connecticut, and none of them are north of
Yeah,
Hartford.
so you'd really, I think Southwick out of any town would benefit the most, and I know a lot of them are going out of business. However, if you plant yourself right on the line there, you're gonna get that traffic,
Same thing
at
with
least for
gas-
the next couple of years.
Gas, well, it could be
Well-
the same thing, gasoline. People come up and stay for gasoline as well.
Right.
When I was a kid, I worked north of Boston, we go to New Hampshire for beer on Sundays.
And that's another, I know we're going backwards out too, but gasoline, you're gonna see a lot of charging stations come up now, because the biggest thing is they're building all these EV cars and there's nowhere to charge them. That's the biggest
Yep.
complaint about people. So when you do think about the infrastructure, you gotta think about where the power can be, because you're talking like the level 3 chargers, you need that, was it 240, no more than that, like
240.
240 volt, right? So that's like a whole nother power situation where once this infrastructure gets puts into place, you gotta make sure that you have the right power and the right lines that are run there already. So that's another thought. When you think about where's the town center, you're gonna need those charging stations. Where will you get the most power?
And what about, bike share or the rail trail? Do you guys have anything like that?
No,
No.
Okay. What about that property that unfortunately just closed that has a lot of greenhouses?
Meadowview,
Yeah,
they're still sitting on, the guy died and she's just sitting on it right now.
yeah.
She's had a lot of offers, I think.
It is.
She's not budging.
Okay.
Yeah. that was a
But so that
beautiful
could be
facility.
used for cannabis.
That's a great, that whole property is gorgeous. That's probably one of the nicest properties in Southwood.
Hmm,
What a fun place to go when they were open,
It's too
and
bad.
I believe it'll get back.
It will
it's
be.
fantastic.
I believe it'll be back.
But I mean, huge amount of traffic, we talk about, we talked a lot about Carvana and traffic, but we love that, but it's a huge amount of traffic.
and half the
This, it's a
traffic,
huge
Yeah,
amount
but
of
that's
traffic.
different, that's different traffic. You're
but
talking
half
about
the
big,
traffic goes from
big trucks
Connecticut,
opposed
so
to.
it's bringing in
Right.
tax dollars.
And they only come a little ways in and then they go back.
Right, same with the pot store.
But still, that Password is driving revenue into the town,
Right,
you know?
oh, yeah.
You want them to go to the gas stations and use all the other amenities here, but at least you know you're gonna hit that one avenue. So, and then maybe they'll go to the grocery store that's right there, or the gas station,
So I'm not hearing a lot of resistance and aversion to cannabis.
I kind of compare cannabis to cigarettes and alcohol. And if you add up the pluses and minuses, I think a lot fewer people die in pot smoking accidents than whiskey drinking accidents. And certainly, I think more people die from cigarettes than pot smoking or pot.
The thing is, 4 or 5
So it's
years
like,
ago,
how do you-
when Massachusetts legalized it, nobody knew, will this increase crime?
Mhm,
What will happen?
Right,
Now there's a track record. We can see Westfield, we can see Springfield, we can see, it's like gambling. We can see these communities, the money's coming in. It's like MGM brings in 22 or 23 million a month. People gamble. That doesn't bother me. If you want to waste your whole paycheck, then you'll be homeless. That's up to you. Or if you want to bet $10 a week, that's your call.
mhm.
So cannabis, I think, is coming around to that. We've seen it's successful.
Less
It's not chaos.
Plus, there's different uses of it
Yeah.
as well.
Medical.
Yeah, you've got different veins that it can go towards. So,
Literally, and figuring out.
yeah. But then our community has also been a strong proponent of growing tobacco.
Right,
Right.
and you let the 14-year-olds handle
Pick
this
it.
highly addictive, it absorbs through your skin.
Oh, my gosh.
And we give them work permits and tell them, go get it, big boy, but you can't smoke a joint. It's like,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
I haven't used pot in 50 years, and you want at it, go ahead.
Yeah.
But like I said, I just compare it to the other things that we do
Mhm.
embrace, and we embrace alcohol in Southwick. We have more places to buy a drink than anywhere in the state per capita.
That's why we've got about 35 bars and
That is
restaurants.
so funny.
Yeah, but you can't.
And two
have an edible, but you can have a shot.
Well, that touches on something
Okay, great.
I'm interested in
Yeah.
hearing a little bit about is Southwick has branded itself as a recreational community.
Mhm.
And I don't know where that came from. I wasn't here when it happened. Someone decided to say, we are a recreational community. Does that sit well okay with business people?
I think it's got the opportunity to be a very established recreational community if it's done right.
Sure, I mean, if you expand the bike paths, look at places like Denver, or when I rode bikes in Vancouver and Anchorage, of all places, bike paths in Anchorage, right? Where you need snowshoes. I mean, the bike paths went everywhere in Anchorage. So if you live here and work here and you want to ride down to the machine shop and then down to the lake and stop at the restaurant on your bike, your electric bike, if you have that
That's
connectivity,
great. Yeah.
you can do it. You know.
So
all the houses on the
you're
golf
okay,
course,
you're
you can-
comfortable with that
My guess is that came,
branding?
my guess is that came from the activity at the lake. Because when my immediate thought of recreational community is you can hop on a dirt bike or a snowmobile or mountain bike, or not necessarily a rail trail, but a mountain
You
bike.
could, when that branding came about, you could hop on a snowmobile and a dirt bike and ride
So
what is now the rail trail.
There's no interest in saying we're a gateway to the Pioneer Valley or some other terminology that's more inclusive of businesses?
Foothill of the Berkshires.
I,
I don't,
I definitely see where you're coming from with that, Marcus, when, I married a Southwickian. And when I started coming into Southwick with my husband, I mean, there was a group of us and they're all local resident heritage families from the Braskas, the Filios. And we did everything on dirt bikes and snowmobiles. We could go all the way to the ranch house, the old ranch house, which is now the rail trail, on dirt bikes and snowmobiles. And it was a recreational community in that respect, but it has shifted. You now don't have access as you did back in the day through people's farmlands and their homes. It's become definitely more restricted. So I would have no problem seeing our tagline and how we brand ourselves as a recreational community changed. Because like Jen said earlier, I love going down to the pier. But I know I can't do it, even especially if I have friends here on the weekends, because I can't park. So that element is taken away from me as a resident. So I think our brand has to really be identified. Because I don't look at it as truly a recreational community like it used to be back in the day.
So we get to that point, and not to bring it too far off track or go back too many clicks, but since we're touching up on that topic, the change, the branding, Eric Mason just brought up the point, he'd like to see the next tract of land bought publicly as there's a off-highway recreational vehicle friendly facility.
yeah, those are rare.
Yeah, I mean, this is Eric. I mean, besides, being able to go to open practice at Southwick, I mean, kids that ride anything in this town, it's frowned upon. I mean, back when I was a kid, shoot, you could get anywhere on the old train tracks all around town. Now, if you even cross it on a dirt bike, people are calling 911 on you before you can even get back into the woods. And not saying that people bomb down the rail trail, but I mean, there's still a bunch of single track cut into the woods behind Comark. I mean, who knows whose land it is and who knows how mad they are. But I mean, back in the day, you could get anywhere.
So I think it's a Massachusetts thing. I don't think it's just a Southwick thing. There's no place for anybody to do anything like that legally here. Oh, it should be one place, October Mountain State Forest, right?
Down on the Cape is a place. Up in Sandwich.
And Pittsfield State Forest, I think you can ride.
Yep. Okay.
There's fantastic lessons. I mean, we ride a lot in New Hampshire. We take young people with us. There's just fantastic learning. And when those kids start driving, they're good drivers because they've already done it on an ATV. Yeah, so it is a good.
We've had kids do it on the streets in Springfield.
Hey, you're a good driver, so.
Yeah.
By and large.
It's hilarious. I watch them go by my house. I'm like, don't you know you're gonna get caught?
They're not, I mean, it's hard to catch them.
It is hard,
Yeah.
but
About 6 months, a year ago, there was an article in the New York Times. And it was talking about a number of towns in New Hampshire that promote that for their economic development, because they said people will stay in our motels or our hotels, will stop and eat a sandwich or have breakfast or whatever. But that's a conscious decision that those
Sure.
towns made, that
right.
this is gonna be our name, our thing.
Speaking of which, we don't have an active motel, hotel, or inn in town anymore. right?
And on that, Scott, they're getting so strict with with Airbnb-ing.
Right.
It's crazy. So they're saying there's only like 6 Airbnbs like that are legal in Southwick. How can you have anyone come in and visit the town when you have nowhere to stay?
Right now, Airbnb is illegal in town.
Well, so there's certain restrictions on it if it's in a house. There's certain ways, but I think there's like 6 legal ones and that's it.
Mm.
People do it all the time, but that would be a better way if the town allowed people to Airbnb to.
Well,
bring more people.
that's why I think that's gonna come up in the May town election, and the town meeting,
Kind of big house.
because they wanna have.
With some historic value. Turn that into an nice B&B.
That's a lot of work.
Traditional.
It is.
Yeah.
Are there any? Yeah.
Say no.
No.
Well, you mentioned that. It's coming up on the agenda. Mr. Goddard, I think, has posted a hearing notice on
It will be.
short-term rentals as to establishing some kind of a bylaw that would allow it with controls or whatever you want to say. There was a subcommittee that the planning board had that operated for several months and came up with a draft bylaw, so we got to go forward with that, see where it goes, but that's a good point, the lodging, opportunities for people
That's a good
to
point.
stay in Southwick.
We also need to give them a reason to stay.
Right.
in Southwick. There, we have the races.
Well, then they can go on the farm tour, they can,
No, really. That
Yeah.
we need to give them the reasons, and then I think we'd be
And the
remiss.
cafe tour, 'cause I was looking for one and there's like, I was like, oh, 3 or 4, which one should I go to?
oh.
Grind on your way out.
I actually had settled on that one.
Yeah, good choice.
Okay.
Other piece I think we need to hit is, I don't think as a town, we do a good job promoting the businesses that are in town. There's been some great restaurants that have opened and closed in town. There's been businesses that I don't think they get the attention they should. So I don't know if it's just a Chamber of Commerce thing. We have a shop weekend, we have
You just brought up our last
Oh,
topic.
I'm sure.
did. Keep going, Scott.
I don't know if Chamber of Commerce, I don't know if it's a Southwick business, come visit your business weekend. I'm not sure.
Well, we do try to promote the small business Saturday after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
But in terms of the Chamber of Commerce, the chamber is located physically in Westfield. It covers the surrounding towns. But if a business either is unable or unwilling to spend the $200 or $300, depending on the size of the business, to be a member, then the chamber is not going to do the work for you.
Yeah,
So we as a town though, and maybe we don't even look at that, the Chamber of Commerce, we as a town though we had lots and lots of people looking at some of the community Facebook pages. If we promoted businesses that way, if there was some type of small group in town that promoted it, if Andy's storage facility all of a sudden had 25 openings and Andy said, hey, I could use some extra help. And then
I'll give you an example.
Great
The
idea.
woman sitting behind you, she puts on Facebook on some of the various forums every day, not every week, but every day. All the meetings that are going on in town hall and different things that are going on in town hall. So some people are trying to do it. One of the difficulties is there are so many Facebook pages
In forums.
and forums.
Keeping up with it and.
5 or 10
It's a
different
full-time job.
ones. Yeah, and everybody's not on Facebook, but there are people
But
who
some
are.
communities do establish a local business association, so you could have a small Southwick Business Association.
There used to be, it
Oh, I
died
see.
about 20 years ago
Yeah.
because businesses wouldn't pay $1 to be a member of it.
Right,
Now you've got the Westfield Chamber, they try to promote things and they hold events in Southwick.
okay,
And you get the business community from Westfield coming to Southwick,
okay.
but we can't get many Southwick businesses to be involved with the chamber.
But we can do things at a local level.
Right,
As a private citizen, I've been attending the Economic Development Commission meetings for the past 9 months. And I've got a marketing background and an event planning background from Mobil Oil, which I worked for many years. And what I chose to do independently is in 10 days from our last economic development meeting in November is I took it upon myself to contact a lot of our local businesses that were independently owned in town to see if they would want to participate in a small shop, local business promotion. I designed bags, I designed flyers. And I then contacted the local restaurants, and granted, I did it right between Thanksgiving week, the Thanksgiving week. So it was a very short period of time. Not everyone responded, but I got 18 businesses that said, yes, put your bag in our business. I got 14 restaurants. Jen was one of them that was willing to give me at least a $25 gift certificate. And in one day, on November 28th, at these local businesses, I had these little tickets that people could put their name and phone number. We got 627 entries for a drawing for gift certificates to restaurants.
How many again?
627 tickets I got in one day, and it was on that Saturday. The local businesses feel as if we, the town, have not been doing a lot to support them. This was the first time something of this magnitude was even brought to fruition. I really feel that we as a town can economically help our local businesses by maybe bringing back that small business association in Southwick instead of saying, well, it failed 20 years ago, let's give it a try again. There's ways that we can really get this community humming and on the same page to help each other, because the businesses said, sure, put your bag, we'll have our customers sign their name. The restaurant said, sure, we'll give you $25. And the people that won, there was a blend between Connecticut residents and our own Southwick residents. They were so excited that they got that gift certificate. It's a start. It's just building the community. Bert Hansen came to our last meeting at the Economic Development Commission and talked about this farm day that he wants to put together. He and I are going to meet Monday night and talk about what kind of venues can we put together for this event. So I think we've gotten a jolt over the past 2 years as a community. And we have an opportunity to look at rebranding, looking at different restrictive lands and how to maybe change how we are looking at ourselves as a community. But we just have to start by all wanting to see the same vision. And that's where I think the disconnect is some people in town have a different vision, but aren't making it clear. We have to understand what that vision is, because other than that, all this time and effort from our days of work, I've taken time out of my day, and my owners were saying, okay, when are you going to get back into the office? But we have to make sure that this is actually going to come to fruition. Something good is going to come out of this instead of that old master plan that did divert the traffic around the community, that it just doesn't go to waste, that it actually can do something good.
But your best point is what has happened in the past and what's been going on in Southwick doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be reflected in the future.
Right.
So once you get people to see that vision and say, all right, we are gonna have this town center where we have all the buildings in the front and parking in the back and park your car, you can go to 8 stores. And we haven't had that in Southwick really, I don't think ever, besides when you go to where Village Pizza is, you can go to the dollar store and the laundromat, yeah, you know, but you know, if that is the vision for the future, we don't need to do what we've been doing all for the last 40 years, 50 years, whatever.
Yeah. Good point.
Running the auto glass shop. Since before really the internet, and that's what I did for the last 40 years was auto glass. We served pretty much all of Western Mass. One of the hardest things was when the internet came in and the yellow pages went away. Advertising for a small business is just impossible. Because every time you put in auto glass Southwick, you get all the big guns ahead of me. And at one point, when you used to call information and say, hey, I need to get A&R Auto Glass, they would say, it would actually have a recording and promote someone else and then give my number. That went away real quick. But technology has hurt us as a small business. It hasn't helped us in the least. Because you can't identify a small business from a big business online. It's impossible.
That's where, if we were to use our Southwoods, which is a great local venue here in town, and say maybe have the Economic Development Commission buy a page, but then allow you as a small business to tag into that, have an article, have an advertisement as well. It's just going to bring more recognition to some of these 30 new homes that were just built in town as, hey, I'm here.
But even beyond that, and I think this on a family basis and on a Boy Scout basis, like I should know all the other scout leaders that have services available. So
Right.
I can call a scout leader that's a plumber and keep the money in that
Keeps it there
circle,
in the family.
right? So if we had a Southwick Yellow Pages type thing, where only if you have a presence in town, can you advertise?
It'd be
Mhm.
nice to
Right,
have a
so
plumber
then you would
available.
go to Southwick, if you get there to the town, if you went to the town website. And you put in pizza, all the pizza places that actually physically exist in town would be there.
That would be
that's something
6
that-
pages.
And if you put, right,
Right.
You know,
And mail
Well,
shops
Google,
would
that's
be
a
the other
Google
5
search
pages.
though, don't you
I
think?
did look
But you
on the
can do a
west.
Google search, but it'll give
No,
you
it wasn't
all the pizza
Westfield.
places not in Southwick, and it'll give you Domino's first. Because all the big guns come.
It usually goes local and gives you like the closest to you.
Yeah.
But
If you throw in auto glass Southwick and watch what comes
Oh, I
up.
can only make your business will see tough because auto glass is,
It's just-
is, yeah. a
right,
common-
the
This
big
has
guns
been
come up
floors, well, there's 10 or 15 floors,
before.
only one of them is actually in Southwick.
There was a
But
website
that's a
that
good
was like
point
an
though, Andy, to do it in our own
Right.
town website,
Website?
have it so that people
Website
can
that was an
access it.
independent website that actually listed a whole
And
bunch
if
of.
you know, like your
businesses and stuff,
brother-in-law is a
I'm sure it wasn't-
cardiologist, well, you would call your brother-in-law with a question
Yeah.
before you would,
I
Right,
got a
right?
whole list.
And it's the same thing.
I didn't name names on all of them, but.
Is there a sign up?
So, just bringing back to that last question, we didn't really get into it, but I think the conversation did speak into the role that the town could play in business retention. We talked a little bit about the struggles with the Chamber of Commerce, which is located in Westfield, but serves both communities. Beyond support with promoting or marketing or advertising for the locally owned and operating businesses, are there any quick ideas for how the town can support business retention? And I just want to do a quick round because I
If
respect
you look,
everybody's
if you
time.
look
We
at
got 2 minutes.
the CDBG money,
CDBG
the town can apply every 2 years. They don't automatically get money every year, the way Westfield especially does. The only thing the town uses that money for, the only thing they apply for is water and sewer pipes and road conditions around the lake and some of the older roads. And the explanation they provide is, well, that's where the quote poorer or the poverty is in town. They always give money to the food pantry.
Mhm.
Pioneer Valley has the public notice in the newspaper saying, are there any other agencies or entities, and you never get any response.
Hmm.
But the town doesn't consider using CDBG money for small business, and that kind of stuff. It just, it's not
It's
within
it's
their view.
very difficult. That was done to some extent during the pandemic. Agawam tried to implement it and the requirements and HUD and DHCD are so stringent that they had to
Westfield
repurpose
does it
the money.
every year. What?
They have
The
more,
facade thing,
yes,
they gave out
I mean, it's not- it's
$1,500
worth
to
looking into,
businesses
for
on
sure.
Elm Street, exactly.
yeah, but as far as grants to businesses or individual businesses, that's why, because it's not that easy.
Or I think that the Hilltown CDC, they get money to support small business. It may not be handing cash to a
Right.
business, but it may be coming up with that
Technical assistance.
directory of businesses in town and maybe other things that they do.
Yes, that's. a good
And that's
point.
reported in that new report that Pioneer Valley just put out, done by a consulting firm that's dated July
Yeah,
2022.
the rural towns.
That those towns
Small
are doing
rural
it, but
towns.
we don't get any of that kind of money.
Well, that's a good idea about the Hilltown CDC, and I know they did a directory of businesses, and why not do it for an individual town? Yeah,
Well, we're bigger than 10 or 15 of the
Yeah,
hill towns
yeah.
population wise.
But we can look about how we can improve letting the public know what's in our town.
Mhm.
And whether it's through the Southwick website, the EDC, getting up to speed with promoting the businesses as well. That's, I think, the first no-brainer step that we can take. Because there's a lot of cool, new little businesses in town that a lot of people don't know. I didn't even know that Congamon Pizza was really as well-known as it is in this town. There's these hidden little jewels that people just don't know about.
I think as a business
One-
owner, opening business here, was a little challenging and overwhelming, looking back, 15 years ago. With the planning board buying property and the planning board, industrial restricted stuff. I don't think if the underlying question, or if there is one, about a tax incentive or break or anything like that, that was not important to me. I think the coaching and guidance that you got from the planning board and the selectmen and whatnot, how to navigate that process was more important than any type of tax and concession. We have 40 to 50 employees. We've had some growing pains over the years, but it seems like we can, come into town, talk to somebody saying, okay, what do we need to do for parking and how far off the street? All those questions are answered easily. I don't want to say an SBA type, but I'm making sure that's accessible to everybody, that, a business that starts here that knows, what the steps are going to be,
Mhm.
but then the assistance that is available, and just like I think some of my best lessons came from an informal discussion on the planning board, just coming in and asking questions. How do you?
Mhm.
Didn't do half of them, but it was great to have that information back, and it was readily available.
But you did do the other half.
Pardon?
But you did do the other
We
half.
did the other half. To the other half.
Big step.
Bill Crawford, I think, was gonna speak. Right.
Yeah, we're asking, I know the specific topic right now is retention, but if we're looking for doing things to help our businesses, big thing is building relationships between people and business in the community. And how many people in town actually know what's in town? A lot of people live here and work outside. Just an idea that came to me is, like Springfield or various other communities over the years had like their big pancake breakfast. What about like once a summer, something that, it's under the guise of a community event, just to bring people together, get to know your neighbors, a big dinner, once or twice a summer, but with as many businesses as possible being able to set up a little vendor or just a little kiosk, or just do it with the promotional stuff, or just saying, this is our community too, and we want to know you. I think they would put a lot of faces to the names that normally people just drive by the sign.
Right, that's a great idea, Bill. I know at the last EDC meeting that I attended last month, we were kicking around some different ideas. And one of them was having an event where the businesses would get together for like a tea or a luncheon and just talk about, the main topic would be is how can we help you? From an EDC level. and just get to hear what the businesses need these days. Is it job fairs? Is it more help in looking at onboarding or whatever it is, but how can we help you? So that's something that we did just start kicking around last month.
Another just event idea to throw into the mix is Taste of Southwick.
That was what I promoted.
Ah,
It was the first annual Taste of Southwick.
and it happened?
And it happened November 28th. That's where I generated the 627 tickets from.
Great.
So, and I've kept all the material because I asked the EDC last month if they would endorse me in planning it again this year, but I'd rather have 2 months instead of 10 days to pull it off. Because then I could reach out to more businesses and more restaurants while also working 60 hours in my career. So I'm waiting to hear back from them at the next meeting if they would endorse me doing it again, and then it would be promoted as the second annual. And we got some great press on it as well.
So our time, so we're going to 11:45.
We're certainly drifting along, but as part of this, I know we've had a core group of participants here. At the end, I just want to make sure we take on to allow public to have a quick comment. Just real quick, is that okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. We'll start in the room. Diane.
I will talk fast. I have a lot of notes written, but I'll talk fast.
Gosh.
I'm Diane Gale, 5 Point Grove Road. I was born on Beating Hills Road. I've been here 63 and a half of my 64 years. I'm quite passionate about this town. I grew up in the dirt. I grew up on dirt bikes and snowmobiles. This is kind of going to follow the order of this discussion. First of all, there's some false information about the value of farmland. Farmland is taxed at the same rate as every other piece of property in town, unless it's Chapter 61 ag, and then it depends on what the use is of that land. If it's non-productive land, it's $57 an acre. You're almost zero. That is not all of the farmland. Agriculture may be lower wage, but it provides local food, nursery products, tobacco, whatever else it's growing. It provides product. It provides employment for our youth. It keeps them off the streets. We also have in this valley some of the most fertile land in the region. That's important. We need programs to facilitate more agriculture, more food production, more interaction with local businesses, restaurants to use those products. Farmers also pay the same business taxes as the rest of us in business, other than the property tax allowance for Chapter 61A. And I don't think that you can dictate that a farmer can't work 100 hours a week and love his standard of living just because it doesn't make sense to you. As far as the zoning, I think the industrial, and by the way, I wrote that bylaw, the major development review, and brought it to the planning board and got it through an almost unanimous vote at town meeting. So I'm kind of passionate. As far as the zoning for the IR zone on 10 and 202, this one, the Carvana property. I don't know where anybody decided way back when that putting an industrial restricted zone over the aquifer was a good idea. And it's right over the aquifer. I did suggest that there are a few named defined restrictions in the IR zone, and I had made some suggestions to the planning board chair that that be reviewed and perhaps define some more, like safe industrial uses. I wouldn't want to see nuclear research there. I wouldn't want to see any kind of hazmat industrial processing there over the aquifer, because we don't serve just Southwick. I would like to see non-polluting industry there, and I'm not against business. I'm for business. I made a lot of people a lot of money in my career. I am for business. I just don't want to see something that is overbearing on our roads, which are bad enough. We've talked about speed here and more trucks, more traffic, more hazards. That's not the kind of thing we're looking for. And then perhaps in not so visible a place in your face on 10 and 202, the one that's further down isn't quite as big and in your face. Doesn't have a huge single footprint like the Carvana would have had. And just one other thing to mention in the bylaw, one part of it that did not go through the planning board into the bylaw that was passed was a cap on building size. But it was in the survey for the master plan, and overwhelmingly people want to see a cap on the building size in the industrial zone, industrial restricted zone. Right, talk fast. Farm tour you had touched on, and also the Ag Commission has been trying to put together some curriculum into school programs. They are working with one of the top students in the school. He's very interested in it and trying to work with them to put something together on that. And there's been a suggestion of a farm club in the school that they would take a piece of the Sofanowski farm, and the club in the school would do that farming and learn about farming.
Cool.
Cannabis in the IR zone. It's curious why it's in the IR zone and why farmers who are in the agricultural zone can't grow cannabis. Peculiar. And also the largest cannabis retailer in Westfield. I know somebody there who was there from the beginning, from the startup. A majority of the customers are over 50. And it is not the riffraff that everyone imagines treading in and out of that store.
Sure.
And that's a big falsehood for people. And they have their own security. So, you know, everybody wants to talk about all the crime and everything, but the places have to have pristine security measures in order to even open. Recreation, we used to have motocross, we used to have a ski hill in town, we used to have snowshoe cross country, we used to have horseback riding trails, and then of course the lake. As far as rebranding, I'm not sure it's rebranding. What a lot of people would like to see is that reinvigorated, and then commerce growing again off of that. And you had mentioned, or you had asked about B&Bs and stuff, and we don't have any. We have bylaws against having rentals. And that was a good thing that came up recently, and we'll see how that goes. But we should have something. We used to have hotels on the lake. Just because we used to have them, they went out of business, that was times. That was the railroad used to be there and bring people in and out and commerce in and out. That changed. Nothing says we can't bring that back and recreate that recreation moniker and make it stick. And I think that's all I have to say. Thank you so much. Oh, one last thing.
Oh, one more.
The Economic Development Commission at the last meeting, I did suggest that I post all the town meetings like this one on the forums, all over the forums on Facebook. I did suggest that they start a small business Southwick forum just for the small businesses to post your business, post your hours, post your services, post your goods. And I would volunteer to be a moderator to get it going. And if they want to take it over, that'd be fine. Where you can post if you've got a sale going on, if you've got specials going on, if you need employees, if you're hiring, whatever you want to do. And only Southwick located businesses could be on that forum. And then cross promoting all the forums. If you're looking for services, go here. Thank you.
And just wanted to thank you, Diane. Bert Hanson, Ag Commission Chair, and Master Plan Advisory Committee member is online. Bert, you have anything that you want to contribute or share? Thoughts?
Yeah,
Thanks, John. This has been a really good conversation. I want to say, I'm happy to see how much of the conversation was devoted to agriculture. I don't really have much to add. I think, other folks have covered, things that the Agriculture Commission is trying to do with, getting farmers together, our farmers forum, having an open farm day and a farm trail. So those things are all underway. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to review all that stuff.
Thanks, Bert.
So that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Bert.
You have to hold up his brochure. No.
Oh, there it goes.
There's the brochure.
That's the,
Yes, when you walked in downstairs.
Yeah, there's
it's
some
on there.
downstairs, so that one is on the
Yeah.
table here. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bert. That's it?
Thank you so much. This has been so interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Thank you for your flexibility. We went over, but we appreciate your time and all of your contributions. It's a great meeting. Thank you.
So when's the next one? What's the next process?
That's, oh, you mean next focus group or?
Yeah.
We are working for probably another half dozen or so. I'll save everyone the committee sure gets.
I think one of the big ones will be
Thanks, everybody.
housing.